Ladies and gentlemen, sports fans alike, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago, one of the couple, two, three best podcasts around. So sit back, grab yourself a cold one and a Polish sausage, park your keister in the French room, and listen to Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago.
In Chicago, you know that all sports rock. The Bears, Hawks, Bulls, Cubs, and Sox. Pick your favorite, you can choose, as long as the Packers lose. For everything you need to know, it's Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago. Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago.
Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago. This is your host, Shawn. Surprise! Alex could not be here tonight, so I will be flying solo. So on this episode, we are going to be talking about Bears. We're going to be talking about Bulls, Blackhawks, Cubs, and White Sox. But first, I'd like to thank our sponsor, the Rockford Ice Hogs. Not familiar with the Rockford Ice Hogs, they're the AHL minor league affiliate of the Chicago Blackhawks. What does that mean for you? You could see the stars of tomorrow today at family-friendly, affordable prices. So make sure you stop over to icehogs.com, get yourself a hat, shirt, jersey, and sign up for season tickets for next season. And more. Tell them Swerski Sports sent you. Hey folks, so we are back. This is the last episode before the big NFL draft, which is coming up in a couple of days. Hopefully you are checking this episode out before the draft. We will have an episode next or afterwards recapping the Bears' choices and our analysis of the players that they selected and whatever trades that Ryan Pace may have bungled into. Talking about the NFL draft, the thing about it is, I don't mind trading up. Trading up to identify a player and get a player that's going to fill a hole is perfectly acceptable. The issue is that the players that we've moved up the draft board to get in the Ryan Pace regime have not been those guys. And we've wasted draft picks in order to move up. And that's not helping us. That's the way you build a successful franchise is, sure, first and foremost, you have to hit on your picks and you have to hit big on your early picks. You need a good quarterback, and you need to supplement your drafts with free agency. And if you end up missing on your draft picks, what happens then is you have to supplement it more with free agency, which hurts you as far as the salary cap goes. And also you end up redrafting that same position. That's where you get into holes. If you don't necessarily have to hit a home run on every pick, but when you hit failures on picks, you fail on a 6th round pick or a 7th round pick, that's fine. I mean, you would rather hit on them, but nobody's expecting those rounds to be hits. On your 2nd, 3rd, 1st, you need to hit on those picks. If you don't, that's where the bad things happen, because you're drafting your 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th round picks. You are expecting that player to be a contributor day one. Your 1st rounder, you probably are expecting them to be a starter day one. And when those players are failures and you have to redraft that position, that screws up the plan that you have. So if you're like, you know what? We drafted a wide receiver in the 1st round and a safety in the 2nd round, linebacker in the 3rd. We feel like those players should fill those gaps. Even if they're not as great as you expect them to be, they have some warts on them that you didn't expect in the NFL, but they're productive players. All right, you're not so bad because you're not redrafting that. But if they're terrible or they're chronically injured, and you have to redraft with another high pick, that's essentially 2 or more picks at the same position to fill the same hole. That's wasteful. And then you look at what the Bears did is the guys they traded up for. Again, like I said, I'm not opposed to trading up as long as you hit on that guy. We traded up for Mitchell Trubisky. We could have traded back and gotten one of the two much better quarterbacks. I know hindsight's 2020, but we traded up. We traded valuable draft picks to get Mitchell Trubisky when we could have had him staying put. We traded up for Leonard Floyd, and Leonard Floyd was okay, but he wasn't the impact player that we expected. I think we traded up for Kevin White. He was a failure, like an absolute failure. So we traded up for players that didn't pan out. And that's the fear. It's not the being aggressive. You're aggressive and you're like, you know what? I've identified it that this is the guy that we need to have on our team. All right, more power to you. But if you miss on that pick, the scrutiny is on. If the Bears had traded up to the second pick and taken Patrick Mahomes, and what Patrick Mahomes has become, nobody in the world would have questioned the draft capital that the Bears gave up in order to get him. Nobody. You'd have been like, you know what? They got the best quarterback in the league. Okay, we can live with that, with the picks that we gave up to move up one spot. But you drafted Mitch Trubisky. So now you're like, well, you wasted a pick and you wasted all of these other picks. All of those picks that you got, they were a waste. That he never was the quarterback that you wanted. And regardless of what happens from here on out in his career, if he becomes a Super Bowl winning MVP caliber quarterback, he was an absolute failure for the Chicago Bears and what they were looking to do. And they missed the opportunity with not just one pick, multiple picks. And it has hurt them dearly. So again, I am not against trading up because the rumors are that Ryan Pace is planning to trade up. It's just that if you are going to trade up, you had better hit a home run with that pick. Who else did they trade up for? They traded up for Anthony Miller. And again, failure. So just not a good history of trading up. And if the rumors are true that, and I'll get to this in a second, if the rumors are true and the Bears are going to trade up to get one of the top 5 quarterbacks, going from number 20, the 20th pick, where the Bears currently sit, to get within the top 10 is going to cost the Bears dearly. And when you trade up in the draft, there's like a quarterback tax. If they know you're going for a quarterback, they're going to tax you on that. And you're going to pay very dearly for that draft pick. So the Bears are going to have to pay handsomely, and they're going to borrow from future draft picks in order to pay for moving up. And I'm looking at it now is, you have no chance to get Trevor Lawrence. He's going number 1. You can't get the first pick. Zach Wilson is almost assuredly going number 2. You're not getting that pick. The 49ers just paid through the nose to get that number 3 pick. You're not prying that away from them. And you don't trade up all the way that high in this draft to not go after a quarterback. So they're going after a quarterback, and I don't know if it's Justin Fields or Trey Lance or Mac Jones, but they're going after a quarterback. So that leaves 2 first-round grade quarterbacks for you to get, and there's several teams that could potentially either take a quarterback where they are, like Denver or New England. Even the Vikings could take a quarterback because they've only got their quarterback under contract, I think, for this coming year. So there are teams that without having to trade up, are already in a position to take the 2 remaining quarterbacks left from you. And that's not even including that the Arthur Blanks, the owner of the Atlanta Falcons, is apparently infatuated with taking a quarterback at number 4. If that happens, no chance the Bears are getting one of the first-round grade quarterbacks. So if you're the Bears, in order to guarantee yourself one of these top 5 quarterbacks, you got to get drafted in the top 5 to guarantee it. And they just don't have the draft capital. They're going to pay through the nose to go into that position. Even if you go to about number 10, where Dallas is picking, you're going to pay a high price for one of those quarterbacks. And the issue with that is you had absolutely better hit on that, because if you are mortgaging your future on this quarterback, then you had better hit a home run. You can't hit a loud single or a double. You have to hit a home run. Hell, you can't even hit a triple if you're mortgaging the future. If somebody falls to number 20, then you're okay hitting a double or triple with a quarterback. Because if you're mortgaging the future, you're giving up your 2022 and 2023 first rounders to move up, you had better get an absolute stud. And honestly, looking at the quarterbacks in this draft, there's 4 tiers. 4 tiers with some sub tiers. So you've got your first tier. These are the first round grade quarterbacks. And there's sort of, they're not all cut in from the same mold. You've got your 1A, which is Trevor Lawrence. That's quarterback in this draft. Then you got your 1B, which is the next tier that are very good quarterbacks that most teams would be happy to get, and which is Zach Wilson and Justin Fields. Then you've got that 1C, who there's some more question marks to them, but they're first round talents, and that's Mac Jones, which the question on him is, what's his ceiling? I personally think he's a quarterback that has a very high floor. You're not going to fail with him, but I don't think he has the ceiling that the other first round grade quarterbacks have. I think any of the other 4 quarterbacks could be an elite quarterback. I don't know if Mac Jones can, but I think his floor is very high. So he's the safest. Well, Trevor Lawrence is probably the safest, but Mac Jones is probably the second safest quarterback in this draft. You're not going to fail with him, but I just don't know where his ceiling is. The other one in that third tier of the first rounders is Trey Lance. Now, he is a quarterback that has all the talent in the world, and I'm not going to say he is Patrick Mahomes. He plays like Patrick Mahomes. He's got a big, strong arm. He doesn't throw interceptions. He's mobile enough. Trey Lance has all the tools. The question on him is, what's he going to look like playing against an NFL defense? He's coming from North Dakota State, the school where we saw Carson Wentz come from. And Trey Lance he only played 1 game last year because their entire season was supposed to be canceled because of COVID. And they played 1 game in order to get film on him. So we don't have a lot of film on him. So that's the question marks on him. But talent-wise, it's just through the ceiling. He may be a flop. He's the most, of those 5, he's the most likely to be a flop. But he's also got sky high, the sky's the limit type level of talent. Then you've got your second tier quarterbacks. And there's actually, this draft has so many quarterbacks in it that that could be serviceable NFL quarterbacks, much higher than usual. And so that's why you're seeing so many teams frothing at the mouth trying to get one of these guys. That second tier guys that, I'm hearing rumors could sneak into the first. I don't think so. They're probably second, third round type guys, probably second because of the positional value. And that's Kyle Trask out of Florida, Kellen Mond out of Texas A&M, and Davis Mills out of Stanford. I would call those the second tier quarterbacks. They're the more likely one that the Bears will be able to get. And then you've got the third tier quarterbacks. These are guys that I think for teams that have an established quarterback but don't have a lot of depth, these are guys that with work could be either a guy that you trade to a team that has an injury at quarterback and needs somebody. You develop these guys. They're either a really solid backup, potentially a starter at some point if you work it out, but these guys are worth a flyer. They have potential. And that's Jamie Newman out of Georgia and Felipe Franks out of Arkansas. And then you've got your fourth tier of quarterbacks, and those are the one that's basically everybody else. Those are quarterbacks that not worth drafting. You're just kind of sort of wasting a draft pick. They're not gonna make it. You might as well, out of those, you might as well just see who doesn't get drafted and bring them in as an undrafted rookie and let them try to win it out that way. They're not worth wasting your picks unless you have a boatload of 6th, 7th rounders and you want to guarantee you get one into your camp. But I just don't feel like any of them are worth drafting. Quickly, I just want to go through. I don't see a realistic way for the Bears to get one of the top 5 quarterbacks, the first round grades. I think the frenzy is there. Teams taste blood in the water, and they're like, quarterbacks are going, and they're like sharks, eyes rolling in the back of their heads, and they're in a feeding frenzy. They're like, I got to get a quarterback. And, it's a very good possibility that all 5 of these guys could be gone in the first 10 picks. Very high. So I just don't see the Bears, and nor should they. Somebody, George McCaskey or somebody should tell Ryan Pace, no, you cannot mortgage the future to move up in the draft. Sorry. You've been here like 7 years or 8 years or whatever, dude. You had all these chances to get a quarterback. You're not mortgaging the future on the off chance that maybe you could get one of these guys. You get the scraps of these guys, not even like the guy of your choice. So don't be that guy. Don't let Ryan Pace mortgage the future. Just, you can't. And I get it. You brought him back. You said he's your general manager, and academically you should be like, well, we shouldn't handcuff the guy. But I just don't, with his history of trading up and overpaying to trade up and missing on his guys that he trades up for, I just don't know how you let him mortgage your future, because if you let him do that, you're in bad shape. So realistically, I think the Bears should look at that second tier of quarterback, ones that have very high potential to be able to do things in the NFL, but they're not the same caliber of players, the first rounders. So the Kyle Trasks, the Kellen Monds, and Davis Mills. I think that's where you're looking as the Bears, and you go, you know what? We've only got so many picks. Why are we going to waste them trading up? Let's stand pat, get one of these guys, and surround him with weapons. Get us a right tackle. Get us another wide receiver. Draft a cornerback. So these are the types of positions that you need to get on your team. And so I'm looking at those three quarterbacks, and I watched film on them, and I know everybody's really high on Kellen Mond. And of those three, honestly, he's the one I would rank the lowest personally. Um, Last year, he passed for 2,282 yards, 19 touchdowns, and three interceptions. But his completion percentage was 63%, which is not terribly good. He's a dual threat. So of these three quarterbacks, he's far and away the most mobile. And he's got a strong arm, but he's not dangerous enough with his legs like a Lamar Jackson. And his arm is not good enough to win with, I don't think. He's got a very strong arm, but I don't always like his decision making. When you watch, he throws a lot of passes with his arm, because I think he does have that strong arm, and he throws into coverage that you're just like, that window you just made it into is not going to be there in the NFL. That is not an NFL window that you threw it into, and he will wing those in there. And I think he's ripe for getting a lot of picks going into the NFL. I don't really like his mechanics, but he does have good pocket presence. Like, he's very aware in the pocket. He doesn't get overly worked up about pressure. Sees his target, doesn't see ghosts. So I do like that. But his deep ball is not very good, and I think that's partly due to the mechanics. And he's a guy that will give up. He will pass on a deeper ball to dump it off, and I think I don't like. I just don't see Kellen Mond being an elite quarterback, and if you're the Bears and you draft him, I just don't see him as being the long-term answer for you. And I wouldn't. I mean, if you're the Bears, you have to walk out of this draft with a quarterback. If you don't, you are a complete and utter disaster of an organization. Like, that is the most tone deaf, stupid thing you could do. So they need a quarterback, and if they were in a better spot, like if you knew, the red shooter was going to be, if Andy Dalton, you knew he was going to be an average quarterback for you, and you could have him for a couple of years, then you're like, all right, I will roll the dice with a Jamie Newman or a Felipe Franks. If I can't get anybody else, I'm not going to overdraft out of need. But I don't think you know what you're going to get with Andy Dalton. So I think you do need to overdraft somebody. And a Kellen Mond, I wouldn't feel comfortable drafting earlier than somewhere in the very end of the third, probably more like the middle of the fourth. That's kind of the range I think he's deserving of. But I feel like he's going to get drafted earlier than that because teams are desperate and it's a critical position. But I don't love him. The second ranking of those three I have is Davis Mills out of Stanford. Last year he threw for 1,508 yards, 7 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, and 66.2% completion percentage. This guy is a statue. He is a pocket passer, period. He's not going to beat you with his legs. But he has good arm talent. I mean, very good arm talent. You watch him pass, his mechanics are smooth. His arm, everything is buttery smooth, like melted butter. It's nice to watch. He looks like an NFL quarterback back there. I don't know how else to describe it. When he's back there, he looks I mean, if you could mask, any identifiers and just make it Photoshop it to being a plain uniform, it looks like Andrew Luck. Like that type of, the way he is back there. I'm like, all right, I'm okay with this. The problem is the guy has had an injury history, and he only has 11 starts at Stanford. That's the scary part, the 11 starts. We look at Mitch Trubisky, had very few starts at North Carolina, and it came back to bite us in the ass. And the number one guy I have out of those three, and this is just my personal opinion, is Kyle Trask. And I know there's a lot of draft gurus and, draft experts that aren't as high as him as I am. And I'm not saying I'm like, oh, team Kyle Trask. I'm just saying is of these three, I personally see the highest upside in him. And I would say Davis Mills might be the safest. I don't know. Maybe Kyle Trask is the safest of them with the highest. I just like Kyle Trask. He's got the production. So last year he threw for 4,283 yards, which put him as second in college football. He threw 43 touchdowns, which was first in college football, versus only 8 interceptions. And he threw for just shy of 69%, 68.9% completion percentage. So he had a good completion percentage. And when you watch him play, he's not, sure, he was thrown to Kyle Pitts, the best tight end by far in this draft, and maybe, he has the potential to be the tight end of our generation. But, Kyle Trask wasn't throwing dump-off passes to get these. He was so aggressive. I like that. He is fearless in there. He's playing like Alabama, and it's 3rd and 3, and he's throwing like a 40-yard pass for a touchdown. He's confident. You go out there and you watch him, and he has confidence. Very Baker Mayfield-ish. He comes from a winning program at Florida. He's got really nice deep ball touch on the ball. He will throw into coverage, and not in bad ways, but I watched him throw to double coverage in the end zone, but it was the positioning of it was where it was that wide receiver had the position and he had the high point to get it. Unless, you had an absolutely incredible play by a cornerback, there was no way anybody was intercepting that. He was either a touchdown or an incomplete pass. The issues I have with Kyle Trask is he will stare down a receiver on occasions, and when he knows that there's a guy he's going to go to, he will stare him down. Not that fleet of foot. He's not a statue like Davis Mills. He sneakily will get you some yards, but he is not a mobile quarterback. And he doesn't always recognize when there's pressure coming. So he just sort of needs to develop that. But I think he's got the highest ceiling out of any of those three, and that's that next tier of quarterbacks. So if I'm the Bears, I'm gonna be like, listen, we can't waste the draft capital on moving up for the hope of getting the scraps of the last 2 quarterbacks of the top 5. That's what you're doing is the top 3 are going to be gone, and then you're fighting for, essentially you're going to be Trevor Lawrence is going to be gone, Zach Wilson gone. I personally think the 49ers are going to go for Justin Fields. And so I think you're competing. You're going to have to move up probably in the top 7 picks in order to get to guarantee yourself one of the other quarterbacks. And it's just too much to pay to get one. I would probably focus on Kyle Trask, who you're probably going to have to spend your 2nd round pick on. And maybe even move up in the 2nd round to get him. I think I think mid to late second round is maybe even early third round is where his, if you're being objective about his talent, that's probably where he is. But because of the positional value that you put on the quarterback position, it moves him up, and he's probably a early to mid second rounder. So the Bears might even have to trade up in the second round to get him. But that's kind of where I rank those guys. If I'm the Bears, that's kind of what I'm doing. And then I also wanted to do. I did one final mock draft for the Bears, and so I drafted without any trades. And I'm sure there will be trades for the Bears, but I don't. It's hard to anticipate what a trade would look like, and that just seems like a complete stab in the dark. So, even more so than mock drafts are. But I did a mock draft where they stand pat, and here's what I have, and I would be very happy with this draft. There's some guys I like in here a lot. I think this would be a home run for the Bears, or at least a solid stretch double or a slide-in triple. Number 20, Christian Darasaw, the offensive tackle from Virginia Tech. He was the per Pro Football Focus. He was the highest rated tackle in the Power 5 in 2020. Very good. Probably could play left tackle in the NFL, very likely, but right off the bat, Charles Leno is going to be your left tackle. You're paying him a lot. He's played there. You just plug Darasaw in there at the right side, and you have a day one right tackle, no competition, and that improves your offensive line immensely. So you look at the way the offensive line would improve is you got a plug and play right tackle. Hopefully Charles Leno returns to the form of when you paid him, when he was actually a pretty solid left tackle. And then you got a healthy James Daniels back playing a guard. Whitehair goes to the other guard position, and then you've got I'm trying to blank on his name. The guy that played center at the end of the year that they was undrafted out of Notre Dame, Sam Mustipher. Sam Mustipher, you put him back at center, and I think that is a much improved offensive line, and it's serviceable enough for you to get by. Second pick, the number 52 overall, I have Kyle Trask, quarterback out of Florida. He led the nation in big-time throws at 41 per Pro Football Focus. So he had 41 big-time throws in the NFL, or in the college football last year. And I think he's exceptional in the pocket. With the number 83 pick, I have Richie Grant, the safety out of University of Central Florida. Super versatile, great with the run support. I think he has the possibility to win the starting safety position opposite Eddie Jackson. I think him being able to play the run support allows Eddie Jackson to do what he does best, which is be a ball hawk. The next pick I have is a guy I'm very excited about. I think he has a lot of potential. Is at 164, Jaylon Darden, wide receiver out of North Texas. I think he's an electric player. Just watch him. He's a touchdown machine. He had 74 catches last year, and in 74 catches, he had 19 touchdowns. That is, one that's like 25 to 30% of his catches are he takes to the house. Dynamic. I love him. I think that's a weapon. I don't know I think you have to sort of gear your offense to find plays for him. I don't know if he's an every snap kind of offensive player, but I think he's a player that you can make room for, and he makes your offense more dynamic. With the 204th pick, I have Shakur Brown, cornerback out of Michigan State. He was injured in 2019, and they had a shortened 2020. So that means he's pretty raw, but I think he might be a steal in this draft. I like him a lot, especially at 208. With 204 and 208. I also take another cornerback out of Oklahoma, Trey Brown. He's a 3-year starter, great player, but I think due to his size, I feel like he's going to be a slot corner. So I still think he's a value there. I don't think you're overdrafting with 2 cornerbacks there. I think they're 2 different needs that you have. 221, I have Milton Williams, defensive line out of Louisiana Tech. He's a 3 technique type player. He was graded over a 90 by Pro Football Focus last year. Fast, strong, explosive. He's just a guy that you got to keep motivated. But if you can keep him motivated, and I think the other defensive players on the Bears will keep him motivated, I think he's a steal. Absolute steal. And then 228, I have Larry Barome, who played tackle and guard at Mizzou. But I feel like in the NFL, he's probably going to be either a swing tackle or a guard. And he's not that fast or quick, but he's a big, powerful guy. I honestly think where he's going to be at his best is at a right guard in the NFL. But I think he's a kind of a road grader type guy. And he's not going to be needed to start anytime soon. He's going to be a injury fill-in or if there's no injuries, he's kind of a project guy. I think you can work him into something and have him be a future piece into your offensive line. And so honestly, for me, I worked really hard in the draft. I think those are all realistic positions for those guys. Maybe Kyle Trask goes a little earlier than where I have him going to the Bears. But I think those are all players that if the Bears got in those positions, they would be happy with. And I think it would be a very productive draft. I'm going to move on to baseball, I think, now. I'm going to start Cubs. We're seeing the same problems with the Cubs that we've been bitching about all season long so far. And I know it's not been a long season yet, but the inconsistencies of the offense. I know this is an odd week to do it because on Wednesday they scored 16 runs against the Mets, and then on Friday they scored 15 against the Brewers. But I think that cements home the point. I think it makes you realize, look at the other games. They have the capability to put those types of numbers up. They just don't. They don't have the problem is you have too many similar style hitters, and they're not able to, there's not enough contact guys on this team. So you look at Tuesday's win. They won 3-1 against the Mets, but it took a really good start from Jake Arrieta, where he gave up 1 run, 5 innings. The Cubs scored 3 runs, but they only had 4 hits. 4 hits. That's not how you win baseball games long term. You look at Thursday's game. They won 4-3 in 10 innings, but you got 3 runs in the 3rd inning, and you didn't score in the other 8 regular game innings. So you had 8 innings where you didn't score a run, and then you had to go into extra frames to get a run to win the game. Or Saturday's game. You lost 4-3, and you should have won that one. You gave up a 2-run shot to lose the lead 4-2. But that happened early enough in the game where you felt like, all right, another team with a productive offense, it's only 2 runs. We can come back and win this. And they couldn't. It's everybody felt the sense of doom, like, all right, well, we lost this game already because we're down 4-2. We can't win this. And they lost. They got it closer. They got it down to 4-3 on Jason Hayward's solo home run. But it's the overall feeling when you're the Cubs. They can't put runs together. Today was a especially stupid game. I think you were down 1-0, but you were late in the game and you couldn't score anything. I mean, the Cubs were just getting manhandled today as far as their offense goes. I think they had 4 hits total today. Look, I was in and out of the game today. So Bodie got a hit, Rizzo got a hit, Baez got a hit, and Duffy got a hit. 4 hits today. They got 4 hits. And they were down 1-0. And you're like, okay, going into the 9th, you're down 1. A solo shot ties this up, sends it to extras. So why don't you put in your stud closer, Craig Kimbrell? That's a position you're like, okay, it's not a save position. It's a keep us in the game position. And you're down 1-0 in the 9th inning. Give yourself an opportunity to go to the bottom of the 9th and potentially tie it up. And instead, you bring in Adam. And he does not record an out. Gives up 5 runs. 5 runs. And you lose 6-0. They scored more runs than you got hits. You can't have that happen. You've gotten the pitching. The pitching has kept you into games. The hitting just isn't working. And you're like, okay, well, so we played 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 games since the last show, and 4 of them were abysmal offensive showings. 4 out of 6, 2/3. You had, and then the other 2 were just absolute mashers. Friday's game was more of a traditional Cubs mash game, where you had Baez with a home run, Contreras with a home run, Marisnick with a home run, Rizzo with a home run. So you had 4 players homer, and then you had 6 doubles in the game. So 4 home runs, 6 doubles. You scored 15 runs. That's a more traditional Cubs. But Wednesday's game against the Mets was it was my favorite game of the season because they scored 16 runs on only 1 home run. Every single position player on the Cubs got a hit, at least 1 hit. And the crazy part about it is the Cubs won 16-4, and Zach Davies only gave up 2 runs, and he got a no decision, which is brutal. But honestly, that was what I want to see more with the Cubs. Get hits, manufacture runs. That's a skill. That is something you need to do. If you plan to compete with anybody, you need to be able to manufacture runs. And manufacturing runs is not always home run. And that's what Cubs score, how they score most of their runs. Home run. Boom or bust. And it's like the whole team is a team of Javi Baez's. Home runs or nothing. And so being able to see them put up so many runs without home runs was great to see. I want to see hard hit balls. I want to see doubles. I want to see good base running. I want to see contact with pitches and less strikeouts and less swinging at balls outside the zones. And that's who the Cubs are, swinging outside the zones. I saw this hilarious video of a guy at a batting cage, and he would swing and miss. And by the time he got himself set to swing again, the next pitch was already going. So he was already like, a day late on his next swing, and just woof, whiff, whiff. And he could never align himself with being ready for the pitch. Most guys would probably in that position just let a pitch go by and then get ready in the batter box. This guy, no, he was just a late, super late swing, like after the ball was already gone. And I was like, this is Javi Baez. It's like Javi Baez right there. So watching the Cubs is a struggle. This is a team, I've talked with friends that are White Sox fans. They're like, the Cubs aren't bad. They're not that bad. But really, they're not that good either. I'm not saying that they're the Baltimore Orioles. They're not a laughing stock joke team. They're a team that is supposed to be in a championship window, and there's a 0.1% chance that they could win a World Series. This is a flawed team, and they're in a bad division. They could potentially win the division. That's not out of the realm of possibility, but can they compete with the Padres? Can they compete with the Braves? Can they compete with the Dodgers? The answer is no. They can't compete with those teams. So, what's the point of being competitive in the regular season? Is you need to be built to be a playoff team. And that's the thing, is most sports is the playoffs are just a microcosm of the regular season. It's more intense, but you still, the best teams from the regular season are the best teams in the postseason for the most part. Basketball, maybe you see some overachiever teams like when the Bulls were the try-hard Bulls under Thibodeau. Probably this year's Utah Jazz, where they're just overachievers. But it's not like you're gonna see some also-ran team run up on everybody and win. But baseball's a different animal. It's essentially a marathon, and then once you get to the end of the marathon, then it's a sprint. And there's sprinters, and then there's marathon runners. And those are not the same skill set. And that's what you see in baseball. Is sure, the Cubs over 162 games, they can have a solid record, and maybe they win a division, but when it comes to that sprint, they're not that fast. They can't win a sprint. There's no chance they can win a sprint unless everybody else trips over their own shoelaces and falls down. It's just not going to happen. And you look at things like, so far, the Cubs have had 6 rubber game matches this year, and they're 1-5. That's just not sustainable when you're trying to compete, for a division title. That's just not sustainable. And I don't know how you reconcile that with the Cubs. Like, how do you fix these things that are broken? And it's, I would say it's an off-season fix, but they've gone so many off seasons, and I don't know the correct fix. And whatever it is that they're doing is not the correct fix. And right now, as it stands, the Cubs are in 4th place in their division, 10-11. The Brewers are 13-8, winning the division. St. Louis is second at 11-10. Pittsburgh is 11-11, which is absolutely shocking. Cubs are 10-11, and Cincinnati is 9-12. And they are on a 7-game losing streak. They are just pooping the bed down in Cincinnati. But this is a long season. I mean, you look at the NL East. Atlanta is 9-12 right now. They're not a 9. We watched them play the Cubs. They're not a 9-12 team. They're going to be better. The Mets, we saw them play the Cubs. They're not a first-place team. Dodgers are just killing everybody. They're 15-6. And man, there's no real stinkers in this league right now. I mean, Detroit is 7-15. They're bad. But most everybody else is over 400. Colorado's not good either. But yeah, you've got competitive teams this year, and we'll see that flatten out. I mean, this is still early on. We're 20 games into a long season, so we'll hold tight there. But on the South side, you've had better results. It's funny because you had better results, but they're not that much better off of a team than the Cubs. Cubs 10-11, White Sox now 12-9, game and a half behind Kansas City, who I don't think is that good either. I think the White Sox end up running away with this one once they get their shit together. But Monday you had 11-4 loss to the Red Sox, and that was, if you take out that first inning of that game, you're like, okay, this is a completely different ball game here. They scored 8 runs in the first inning. So it's a tight ball game if you're able to throw out that first inning and the batting practice that they went on. If you take out that first inning, it's a completely different ball game. And as the White Sox, you competed in that game outside that first inning, and that's crazy that Lucas Giolito made it 1 inning, and he missing his next start because he's got a cut on his finger. So I don't know if that impacted him in this game or if he got cut in that game and just wasn't the same player. But that's not the Lucas Giolito that we're used to seeing, especially against a Red Sox team tee off on him like that. But the good things in that game is you saw Tim Anderson go 3 for 4, saw the home run by Luis Robert, and we saw Mercedes pitch. So at least some fun things came out of that game. Then the rest of the week you saw nothing but White Sox victories, which is good. You had an 8-5 win against Cleveland. Carlos Rodon had another solid start, 5 innings, only 2 runs. His ERA is still less than 0.5 on the season. So Carlos Rodon doing really well. You happy for that? You mashed 4 home runs in that game. You had 7 players with hits. The White Sox offense churning at that point. Friday, you had the 9-7 win against the Rangers. I don't know what you're getting from Dylan Cease. Is he a long-term starter for a quality team? You hope so for the White Sox. And Marshall's been shit this season. So between Cease and Marshall, you went 5 innings with 5 earned runs. Hendricks came in and got the save, but he did give up a home run, which is you're always like, ugh. And he's got a 4.5 ERA at this point. Hendricks is still leaving a bit to be desired. But Mercedes, after cooling down a bit, comes roaring back here, going 4 for 4 with a double and 3 RBIs. And that guy, at some point, you're just waiting for him to level off, and you're really not seeing that. You're just not. He's just making good contact with the ball, solid contact, and good things happen when you put the barrel of the bat on the ball. You make hits, you make hard, even when you're making outs, you're making hard outs. I like the way he approaches the plate. I I think he's going to make himself a lot of money doing this. But you look, and I still don't like the way that Tony La Russa is constructing these lineups and his substitution patterns. I just don't understand. Like having Adam Eaton batting second, Abreu's struggling a little bit, but Mercedes is crushing the ball. Why don't you move him up in the order so he sees more at bats? He has more at bats and more meaningful at bats. Luis Robert way down in the lineup. You're seeing, although he's really struggling, is Adam Vaughn is not getting regular playing time, and I feel like they're doing this kid a disservice. I keep saying it. Is when you have a young player, especially when he doesn't have a lot of professional experience, you gotta have him playing baseball. He's shown that he's hit at every level, and I'm confident that at some point he'll hit in the pros. But you need to give him at bats. He's not going to get better by sitting on the bench and going from hot, cold, in out. He's got to have regular swings. And I just feel like they're doing a disservice. And it's not like they're needing them to manufacture runs every day. They've got so many other guys in the lineup that can bop it. And sometimes the guys that they put in there, Lurie Garcia is batting 170. Zach Collins is batting 206. Like, there's guys that aren't hitting either. And you're like, okay, well, why can't he get in there at some point? So I just don't understand that. But we did see Michael Kopech come in and start today, and he continued to look good. Pitched 5 innings, only gave up 1 run. ERA is a 1.72. It might be time to admit maybe Alex was wrong when he thinks he's a reliever full time. That the kid's got good stuff. He only went 5 innings. You'd like to see him go a little more, especially in the AL, where you don't have to worry about, in the NL, sometimes you pitch less innings because you're like, oh, the pitcher spot is due up in the lineup, so we need to take our pitcher out and put in a pinch hitter and pull him out of the game. Then you don't have to worry about that in the AL. You can pitch a guy until he's ready to come out. It doesn't matter. You don't have to worry about the strategy of when he's doing the lineup in the batting order. So you would like to see your AL pitcher pitch a little longer because 5th inning, usually about the 5th innings when you're coming up again for the pitcher in the NL, you're like, okay, maybe it's time to take him out so we can try to manufacture some runs with a pinch hitter. But you don't have to worry about in the AL. So, you kind of want to see more out of Michael Kopech. And sure, he's been coming out of the bullpen. That's so, maybe he's just not stretched out fully yet to go 6, 7, 8 innings. But I'll be interested to see how they start working the order. You expect Lucas Giolito back for his next start. Does Dylan Cease lose some time? Does Kopech go back to the bullpen? Because Lance Lynn is coming back as well. So you've got Rodon pitching well. You had Keuchel pitch a good game. Giolito's going to be back soon. How many starting pitchers are you going to have? So, who loses rotations, or do they put somebody back into the bullpen? The other good news is Garrett Crochet pitched 3 innings today. Seems like the velocity is starting to come back a little bit. It's still not where it was when he came up last season, where he's throwing triple digits, but he's throwing in the upper 90s, which is good. So you see like the velocity's coming back. So I don't know if that was like a conditioning thing. He wasn't quite ready. He had to ramp up to that. Maybe something with the cold weather, harder to throw it. Now that it's warming up a bit, you'll start to see it. I don't know. But it's good to see Garrett Crochet because he's more effective when he's throwing faster. I think when he's throwing a little slower, I don't know if he has quite the movement on the ball to avoid bats. So I think he needs to use some of the speed to offset that. But yeah, the White Sox, good week for baseball. You did have a blown save yesterday from Hendricks. I don't know what to say. Bullpens are tough. Closers are tough. It's, you build what's supposed to be a great bullpen, and they don't always perform. If he's going to blow saves, might as well get him out of the way now. Hopefully he regains his form soon enough. Maybe when the weather turns and we're in the 80s and 90s, he pitches a little better. I know I played baseball growing up. Playing baseball in the cold weather sucks. I don't like to do it. So I'm sure there's players that are like that as professionals. We'll see but I feel like by the end of the season, he's going to return to being the guy that you brought in. And once he's in a groove and being lights out like you expect him to, that sets the tone for the rest of that bullpen. And so as long as you stop throwing Marshall out there, you can really start setting your bullpen up, and I think you get a better product, especially with this good starting pitching you've been getting. Lance Lynn's been good. Other than the last start, Giolito's been good. Now you got a good start from Kopech. Rodon has been aces. And Keitel's starting to come around. So I feel like this team is coming together. You're scoring a lot of runs. Your pitching is starting to come around. You just got to get that bullpen back to where it is, and they're going to be ahead of Kansas City in no time. I'm going to talk Blackhawks and then wrap this up with Bulls. This week has been a tough one for the Blackhawks. They were behind in the standings, going in, trying to get a playoff spot. You were looking at having to beat Nashville. Nashville was a team ahead of you. You had 3 straight games against Nashville. You could have taken all 3. Whoever won that series was going to be in the driver's seat for that last playoff spot. And, unfortunately, we all knew Nashville has owned the Blackhawks all season. And it was unlikely that the Blackhawks were going to figure this out this week and take advantage. The Monday game, the first of the 3, the Predators spanked the Blackhawks. Won 5-2. 10 different Predators had a point. That fourth line of the Predators was really good again. And it was the 6th loss the Blackhawks have had to the Predators this season. You saw Lankinen get pulled, which I think was more of a wake-up call to the Blue Liners than it was to him. I felt like he got hung out to dry a lot by a defense in front of him. I didn't think they played very well. So Lankinen got yanked and got sort of spanked because of that. But it's honestly, you saw Subban be in the next 2 games, and he got peppered too. So I feel like it's just the Predators. The Predators were able to dominate, and the Blackhawks defense just didn't really have answers for it. Wednesday's game they won. You saw a 5-4 victory in overtime, but even winning in overtime, the Predators still got a point from that. So out of possible 6 points this week that the Blackhawks could have taken, they got 1. And the Predators got 5. So you got your 5-4 win in overtime. And it was kind of a miracle that they even got to that point. You watched, they were just being dominated. They were down 4-1 late in that game. And Blackhawks scored like 3 goals in 2.5 minutes to tie that game up. And there was some odd turnovers. And the Predators goalie has been lights out. And they were able to capitalize and get some shots on him that they hadn't gotten. So you got like 3 goals in like 2.5 minutes. And, you know, you were able to take that one, bring it to overtime, and come out with a victory. You're like, okay, maybe they're getting some momentum. Let's see if this can translate into the third game. Because if the Blackhawks can take that, you're like, okay, they're not in that bad of a position. It's not that good of a position because you needed to be able to win more than that, but not so bad. And then you came out flat, 3-1 loss to the Predators. So at this point now, Dallas has leapfrogged you in the standings. Predators stayed ahead of you. So you are a few points out of being in a playoff spot, and you've only got 2, 4, 6, 7 games left this season. And the teams you're playing are Tampa, 2 against Florida, 2 against Carolina, and 2 against Dallas, who are the team that's ahead of you. So I don't know how the Blackhawks make the playoffs this year. I think it's done. Maybe that's a good thing. I mean, we like playoff hockey, even if we know that they're not gonna make noise in the postseason. It's just nice to be able to get more experience for this team. But some sort of take homes is, we're winding down the season here. I feel like Kirby Dach is still feeling the effects of that arm injury, that wrist injury. I really feel like he's going to be a good player, but I feel like he's got some of the lingering effects from that, because that was a brutal injury. It wasn't just like a broken wrist. And I don't know if you guys saw the picture of it. It's like his wrist was shaped like an S or it was so wonky, dislocated, and broken. Ugh. I'm gonna barf. Have a Marty Havlat crockpot sound thinking of that picture. Yeah. Also, I've liked the return of Vinny Hinostroza. I think he's bringing good things to this team. I like that. And the last thing I just want to talk about is that the Blackhawks had a complete turnover and rebuild of the defense, and they brought in Ian Mitchell and Adam Boquist and Nicholas Baudin and those guys. Those 3 guys might be great offensive players. I'm not going to deny that. It's the Blackhawks need a young defenseman who's a good defensive defenseman. He's the good defensive defenseman they have are older. And Riley Stillman has been that guy. He's a young guy. You've seen some good things from him. And it's funny because I was making notes to myself, like, I want to talk about this, where I feel like he has a future with this team. He's 23 years old. And I think Zadorov is not the future of this on this team. I feel like they tried to find a trade partner for him that they felt like they'd get more value keeping him than what they were going to get from him. But I don't think Zadorov is the future of this team. But Riley Stillman, you're like, okay, I think he brings some good things. And then, literally as soon as I finish writing that up and getting prepped for that, the Blackhawks reward him with a 3-year extension. All right, okay, I like that. It was a very low-cost move. I want to say it was, Stillman. This is a 3-year contract extension, and with an annual cap hit of $1.35 million. So we're looking at like 3-year, $4 million contract, roughly. So you're like, all right, I like that. I feel like, they acquired him in early April from Florida, and I think his physicality and his age, and his pedigree, his dad was a 2-time Stanley Cup winner, played 16 years in the NHL. I think all those things add up. You're like, okay, the physicality, the youth adds to our youth movement. Bringing him from a winning organization with the Panthers, his pedigree, and the way he's played since the Blackhawks had brought him over a couple of weeks ago. I like this, and being able to keep him on your team until he's in his prime, 26, 27 years old, for 1.35 a year. I think that's a good value there. So kudos to the Blackhawks. I could shit all over Stan Bowman for some of the things he's done in the past, but I feel like there's a vision here, and I don't know how we handle going forward because there's still a lot to do to make this team a winner. But it's going to be, they automatically have a good addition coming back for next year because we saw that Jonathan Toews is progressing and expects to be back next year. So you're like, okay, well, we're getting back an all-star top line center, automatically going to make your team better. You're going to have each of those guys get some more experience. You've got money to work with in free agency. So I feel like they're on the right track. I'm interested to see how they're going to move forward with this team because I think if they make some smart moves that they can actually be competitive of a team. I think the first and foremost is they got to get a little tougher on the blue line and be able to have better protection to their goalies because, you don't have an elite level goalie at this point. I like Lankinen. I think he's a solid goaltender, and he might end up being a good goaltender, but he's not an elite goaltender at this point. Maybe one day, I don't know. I don't think so, but he's definitely not an elite goaltender. You've got to have better play in front of him. You can't hang him out to dry and expect him to bail you out. He's not Martin Brodeur. He's not Patrick Waugh. He's not, these elite guys that can stand on his head and save the game for you. You've got to give him some help. He needs partners out there, and I feel like that's going to be the biggest thing for the Blackhawks. I think they can manufacture points. I think they're going to be especially better when you bring back Jonathan Toews. It's going to be how do you play defense in front of your goalie? And Jonathan Toews is a good defensive center. That's going to help somewhat, but your blue liners got to be better, and that's where they have to improve. And so I'll just be curious of how that happens. Let's wrap this up a little bit with Bulls. This is such a frickin' night and day Jeckyl and Hyde type team. So Monday, they had a really nice win. 102-96 against the Celtics. Vooch had 29 points, 9 rebounds. Kobe White stepped up while Zach LaVine is out with COVID. And, we'll talk about that in a minute. But Kobe White had 19 points, 7 assists. You saw good defense, being able to hold a good Celtics team to under 100. You're like, okay, that's what we need to see. Because the goal, once you made that Vucevic trade, the goal was not to tank because you traded your first round pick. You're not going into the draft lottery. That's not the hope. You're trying to push into the playoffs. So all right, even with Zach LaVine out, and it's looking like he's going to be out for a bit. It's, they hoped 8 games, but I think 8 games is the starting point at this point. So, we're going to probably be without him for a little bit longer. So, guys got to step up. And the guys you're looking at are Young. Young's got to step up. Kobe White's got to step up. Lauri Markkanen's got to step up. Vooch has got to step up, and Vooch has stepped up. Vooch has been very good. But he can't win these alone. You got to have somebody else step up with him. And so in that Monday game, you saw Kobe White step up, looked good. And then you're like, all right, Wednesday we're playing Cleveland. We feel like you should be confident in that game because you just beat a good Celtics team. And you shit the bed. That's a definition of shitting the bed. came out listless and just absolutely puzzling play. And you lose 121-105 to Cleveland. At one point, you trailed by 33 points, 20 turnovers. Nobody played well in that game. Nobody. That's an embarrassment. How do you follow up a good win like that? And you go out there and sleepwalk. It's tough. It's tough, man. You need to win those types of games. You need to play consistent basketball. And then Thursday, you followed up with a nice win, a 108-91 win against Charlotte, who's a good team. And that one, you had 3 guys step up. Vooch had 18 points, 16 rebounds. Kobe White, 18 points. Young had 18 points. You had 3 guys step up, and you're like, all right. And then followed up with another loss. You had a loss 106-101 to Miami. And I get Miami's a very good team, but if you could have won that game against the Cavaliers, which you should have, you're a better team than they are, I think. And it makes that close loss to it wasn't that close. It was more close in the score. That loss against Miami, it makes it look not so bad because you're like, all right, well, we just took 3 out of 4 this week. You're like, all right, that's good. That's a path to making the playoffs. But then win a game, lose a game, win a game, lose a game. That is spinning your wheels. That's not helping you out. And that loss to Miami, sure, it looked pretty close, 106-101. But you look, and really, it was a big comeback that you had that fell short. But Miami was dominating that game most of the game, and it could have been a blowout at one point. And honestly, the most embarrassing thing happened in that game is, I'm sure you all have seen the meme, the video, everything of it, is Denzel Washington comes up the court with the ball, and from about 10 feet behind the 3 line, chucks one up, and it looks like Michael Scott from The Office when they were playing basketball down in the warehouse, just launching it. And you're like, what the hell were you doing? Like, I wish I had the confidence of Denzel Washington going down the floor ready to shoot a 3, because that guy it clicks in his head. You know who's the fucking man? Denzel Valentine. Denzel Valentine is gonna march down there and make that shot, and he goes out there and just whiffs, and it was the laughing stock of the NBA that night. I wish they would have cut him at that point. Like, that's it. Can't deal with this. Oh man. But really, Zach LaVine is out in COVID protocol, very likely with COVID. I don't think if you're tested negative, you're out this long. I think he's probably got it. He's probably tested positive. And that's an opinion. Don't sue me, Bulls. You need guys to step up. And where's P. Will? That guy has hit the rookie wall and has faded back, and this should be a time where he should be blossoming. I still think he's going to be a solid player, but oof, he's really plateaued at a low point. Almost like he's valleyed, which is frustrating. Lauri Markkanen should be stepping up big time, and just not. He's just not. I think this is cemented that he is not part of this team long term. You can spend that money better elsewhere. I just don't think Lauri Markkanen is the future of this franchise. And I'm not saying that he expected him to be. There was a time when you were like, oh, this guy is probably the cornerstone when the Bulls are contender. That ship has sailed. And I don't even think I don't even think he's a cog in this team when they're a competitive team. I just think he's done. So you look at him, and I think you take that salary and you renounce his rights at the end of the season, and you move on. You spend that money elsewhere. Maybe you use it to pursue Lonzo Ball or somebody else. I just don't think you need him, and I don't think he fits with what you're trying to do. And then I guess one thing I didn't talk about that, sort of doesn't really fit in any other topic is Mongo Steve McMichael probably should have been an NFL Hall of Famer, should have a bust in Canton. Member of the 85 Bears. Announced that he's got ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease. And, Steve McMichael has been a loudmouth and said stupid things, and I don't always like his a lot of his opinions about things. I think he's wrong on a lot of things. But when it comes down to it, is ALS is a tough disease, and it seems like it's affected him quickly. They said he can't lift his arms. He's already losing functionality in his body. And I think they said he just got diagnosed in January. We're not even in May, and it's already impacting him like that. That's tough. You don't wish that on anybody. And I wish him the best. If he truly, unless it's a misdiagnosis, if it's truly ALS, there's no hope for recovery. You just hope that the time left he has on this earth is he's able to spend and make quality as possible. So to Mongo McMichael, our best wishes to you, and thank you for what you were able to do as a Chicago Bear. It's a tough one to swallow. And on that note, I really want to thank everybody so much for listening to the show. Alex and I do this regularly. This is a passion for us. This is not like, oh crap, these guys make money on it. We do this because we love it, and you guys listening is the reason we do it. It's very cathartic. We like presenting it to you, and the folks that do listen to this show seem to really like it, and that makes us happy. It makes it worthwhile to us. And I know we can't be here today. It's family obligations, but listening to us is we really appreciate it. So however you guys listen to podcasts, if you can hit subscribe, whether that's iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, TuneIn, Google Play, Spotify, just hit subscribe. If you have friends that listen to podcasts that like Chicago sports, send them this link. Tell them, hey, check this show out. Maybe they like it, maybe they don't. It's not for everybody. But definitely pass it along. That's how we grow the show. And follow us on social media at Swerski Sports, facebook.com/Swerski Sports, SwerskiSports.com, or AlexPatSportsChat.wordpress.com, or Facebook, Alex Pat Sports Chat. That's Alex's personal blog about sports. Follow that as well. And thank you guys so much for listening. And until next time, bear down.
Cubs win! What a lucky break! The good Lord wants the Cubs to win!
We thank Ditka and God for all they have provided.
Cubs win! Cubs win! Cubs win!
Oh, I don't want her, you can have her, she's a Packer fan. She can't fit in my van.
And she looks like number New Yorkers. Smoking crack is not legal on planes.
Bears 31, the -7.
The Bears. Oh, when the Bears go bearing down.